Before we start today's episode, I would like to quickly read you our podcast disclaimer. The content in this podcast is for general reference and educational purposes only. It is not meant to be complete or exhaustive or to be applicable to any specific individual's medical condition. No information provided in this podcast constitutes medical advice and is not an attempt to practice medicine or to provide specific medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. This podcast does not create a physician-patient relationship and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please do not rely on this podcast for emergency medical treatment. Remember that everyone is different, so make sure you consult your own healthcare professional before seeking any new treatment and before you alter, suspend, or initiate a new change in your routine. Welcome to The Starting Gate. We're your hosts, Dr. Kitty Dotson
and Dr. Sarah Sheets,
two internal medicine doctors who spent years practicing traditional primary care. Over time, we realized something was missing from modern healthcare. A real understanding of how everyday lifestyle choices impact overall health.
We'll help you cut through the noise of the countless health influencers and their conflicting opinions, because no matter who you follow, the basics of lifestyle medicine are at the heart of it all.
Welcome back to The Starting Gate. We're your hosts, Dr. Kitty Dotson
and Dr. Sarah Sheets.
I can't believe we're saying this, but it is already time to start thinking about going back to school. You may have felt like summer has flown by, and I think for me, this is the first year I've really felt like that. Normally, I'm like, oh my gosh, is it over yet? Can we get the kids back to school? And you may be feeling that way too. So either way, we've got to start wrapping our heads around the fact that school is just right around the corner. So we are so excited today because we are joined by three incredible local principals from Fayette County who are going to share their tips for us on how we can make this a successful year for our kids, how we're going to ease back into that transition of school, how to communicate best with your teachers, and then how to be a really good advocate for your child. So this conversation hopefully will be full of practical advice for all the parents out there and get us back into the groove of classroom learning.
We have three principals that span from elementary, middle, and high school today. So all of our listeners, be on your best behavior because the principals are listening.
I really feel like we're going to get in trouble. It's weird to be with all these principals. You feel like, oh my gosh, I'm in the office.
Yes, we're in trouble. So we're really excited. We're going to have each of them introduce themselves, give some information on how they got into education and a little bit about their story. And to get us started, we have Scott Loscheider, who is the principal at Dunbar High School. Mr. Loscheider, can you please tell our guests a little bit about yourself?
First off, I just want to say thank you for letting us come on to the Starting Gate and presenting our schools, Fayette County Public Schools, as well as just giving you a little bit of insight of who we are and what we do. But yeah, this is year 17 going into education, 12 in school administration, and I'm entering year 3 at Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School.
Hi, alma mater.
There we go.
Go Bulldogs.
I'll often say that we're all in on 1600 Man o' War because I want Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School to feel like the dead center of the community. So you'll often see me yelling that down the hallways or on the morning announcements. But yeah, this is year 17. I got my start in Fayette County Public Schools as an elementary PE teacher at Dixie Elementary. Then I did 9 great years in Clark County as a school administrator at elementary school, preschool, and the high school. And like I said, this is year 3 at Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School. And I'll go ahead and say it's one of the hardest jobs, the most physically, mentally, and emotionally demanding jobs, but it's also the most rewarding thing I've ever done, getting to lead that school.
For our middle school representation, we have Mr. Eric Thornsberry, who's the principal at Winburn Middle. Can you tell our guests a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, and again, thank you for allowing us to join the Starting Gate, and we're excited to talk about the school year. So this is my second year at Winburn Middle School as the principal. This is my 24th year overall in education. It's hard to believe that it's been that long. I can feel it a little bit, but it is crazy to think that 24 years in this business. My 18th overall in administration. A short period of time as a LBD teacher and social studies teacher, and then was immediately guided into administration by some fellow administrators that saw something in me that, quite frankly, I didn't see in myself. So that journey has just taken me from a dean of students at LTMS to an assistant principal for 4 years, principal at Tates Creek Middle for 12, and then I've landed here on the north side at Winburn Middle School for the last 2 years. I'm really excited the work that we're doing. We're really trying to build that community feel, really revive the north side pride. You'll hear Eric Hell and I at Brown Station High School and myself talk about the north side quite a bit and what we hope to do, and then the work that we're putting in to build that sense of belonging.
For elementary school, we have Miss Jill Angelucci, who is a principal at Squires Elementary, and we're really excited to have you as well.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I am starting my 21st year in education, my 9th year as a school administrator. I started out as a high school math teacher in the Chicago area, which is where I'm originally from, and then moved into the middle school math world at Beaumont Middle School here in Fayette County. I spent 5 years in Clark County with Mr. Loscheider as a high school assistant principal, and then joined Mr. Thornsberry at Tates Creek Middle School as a middle school assistant principal, and then this will be my second year as the principal at Squires Elementary. I also have 3 girls of my own. One will be starting middle school this year, one in 3rd grade with me at Squires, and one who will be in her last year of preschool.
That's great. And for you guys, do you all have kids in school as well?
Yeah, I've got the 2 kids at Liberty Elementary, and I also have a wife who's a curriculum coach over at Deep Springs Elementary too.
And another connection with us, my wife is an elementary teacher at Deep Springs Elementary. She works with Miss Loscheider, and we have a daughter. We just became empty nesters. She just finished her freshman year at Eastern Kentucky, where she's also running track. That's been a challenge for my wife and I both as well, to get that kids out of the house, sitting at home. What do we do each and every night now?
Yeah, that's different. That seems so far away, but I know it happens so fast. So to get our conversation started today, we really just want to start by asking, what are some practical ways parents can help their kids transition back to the school routines after summer break? Because school's just around the corner, and a lot of times we really don't think about getting ready for back to school until the week school starts.
I think this is going to be particularly hard for high school kids because my kids still have been waking up relatively early because they're young, and we've also been doing a lot of camps. But I'd be particularly interested to know what you recommend for those kids that have been used to sleeping in and staying up late all summer.
Yeah, I think going back to the old school alarm clocks would be helpful. We often use our phones as alarm clocks, but we end up scrolling on those things all night and we don't actually get to bed, right? Those are some of the challenges I think even as adults we have, checking those emails, or we're scrolling through social media, etc. But I think really shutting it down and really trying to go to sleep at a decent time and then setting that alarm and getting into those routines 2-3 weeks out prior to school, it's important.
At the middle school level, transitioning 5th to 6th, parents, sometimes there's a little disconnect because it's middle school and kids don't want that connection. But the importance of having those conversations now about what middle school is going to look like, the time difference. A 5th grader transitioning up is used to getting on a bus at 6:30 in the morning. Our doors don't open until 8:35. So really having those conversations and then getting kids excited, like what are they most excited about? What are you worried about? And just having those discussions as a family, sitting at the house, just to start building towards school rather than wait until the night before and just saying, hey, tomorrow morning you're getting up at 7 o'clock, getting on the bus. So I think those conversations really can allow the kids to start to adjust and get their minds ready for, oh man, school's just around the corner. Like we've got to start thinking about that.
I think for elementary, a lot of the things, and it's different because it's still a wide range of ages, but really just preparing the kids to be independent and what that looks like for each age. So if you've got one of the younger students, making sure if you're buying shoes that have laces, that they know how to tie their shoes and they feel comfortable doing that, or asking for help, that you talk to the kids about if there's something you're not able to do or if you need help, who they go to for that. Talking about lunches, if you're packing a juice box in the lunch or something they need to open, can the kids open that on their own? Obviously, there's people there to help do that for them, but that can become a source of anxiety for some kids if they can't open their string cheese, or what that looks like if they need help with that, or just practicing and walking through what their day is going to look like. For some of our older kids, or even really all of them, just being prepared as a family, and this is really for kids all ages, but they're going to be tired those first few weeks back to school, and just being prepared to maybe not have a ton of evening activities scheduled, or what that's going to look like as a family to prepare for that coming home from school on those first days.
I will never forget both of my daughters, when they had their first week of kindergarten, they literally got in the car and passed out. So that was something that
sure.
everyone said they would be tired, but until you experience it, they are exhausted. So it is really important to make sure that they are getting enough sleep and working on those sleep routines. I know when we talked about summertime, we talked a lot about sleep and how to help your kids out with that. But it's really important to help earlier instead of waiting just the night before the first day of school to get these sleep routines back in place, because it is really hard when you've let them stretch out over summertime.
Yeah, and if you want to go back and listen to, if you're thinking about sleep and how important that is, especially for our kids trying to learn, go back and listen to our episode with Lauren Whitehurst this summer that we did on sleep. She really talked about the importance of sleep and how to use it to maximize your learning and your success in school, and even how to use naps to reinforce learning as well. So sleep is so important. So I think trying to get back on track with that is one of the first things to do. It's just hard in summer. It's hard to tell a teenager to go to bed on time when it's light and their friends are out and they're used to
Yeah, definitely.
doing things.
But you could also talk about that with adults too, like with our routines, right? So we've been getting up, going to work, not necessarily having to take the kids to school, but that whole thing adds an entire level of stress too, because now you've got to get 2-3 kids out the door. But walking through that even as adults, because we set the tone as, now I'm putting on my parent hat, we set the tone for that kid's success first thing in the morning to how they're woken up, right? Our attitudes towards, go get your shoes on, come on, put them on, let's go, get out the door, to wait into a car lane. And then we wait in the car lane for 10 minutes. Really setting that tone and that energy level and that positivity of, hey, this is the first day. We're going to be planned, not just the students or the child, but as a family, we're going to be planned to get out that door on time every day.
It's a great point. We don't really think about preparing ourselves as parents, but we're the ones running that morning show. So that's a great
Make
point.
time for the back to school photo, right?
Yes, exactly.
Like you're going to need
Build
a
in
good,
some extra time.
yeah, maybe call the neighbor and say, hey, will you get up early so you can take the photo
Yes.
of the whole family? You got to get those things planned out.
No, all of those are really important. And I do think sometimes it's just making a plan for it can help a lot. When it comes to talking about some of this back to school anxiety that kids may have, especially kindergarten, because I know that is just a big transition, as well as sixth grade, as well as freshman year of high school, these big transitions. What can parents do to help their kids deal with some of that anxiety that might be building up in these weeks ahead?
The first thing is that all schools have transition weeks for those kindergarten, sixth grade, and ninth grade transition grades. Some call them Summer Ignite, some call it Transition Week. And it depends on the school, how long it is. But really important to, if you're available and can, for those kids to attend those transition weeks and just be in the building, see what their schedule is going to look like, meet the teachers, meet other kids. And then also making sure you attend those back to school nights. Every school has a back to school night. Elementary is August 7th. And so for families to get in there and meet the teacher, kids can sometimes drop off school supplies, see friends again, or even in kindergarten, just see what the building looks like and meet the specials teachers and meet different people in the building that will be there. So I think those kinds of things can definitely help reduce anxiety on day one.
Yeah, I think there's importance in I talked about conversation, but framing things in a little more positive light, especially at the middle school level. We always hear middle school is the worst. Everybody says that. The reality is it's not when you work there every day. Kids that are having the time of their life, they don't know who they are at that point. They're trying to figure it out. But if home is framing it in a way that it's going to be a negative experience, we come in with those preconceptions that this is not going to be good. So having those positive conversations, talking to the kids, and I'm the only one in the group that has had a kid go through elementary, middle, high, and into college. That's something we had to do with our daughter too. Is like, hey, it's a new school, new opportunity. Go in there. Here's things you can expect. And really make sure you're not framing, or that we're not having those conversations that frame it when they walk in. There's already that fear factor. We need to make sure that as parents, we're giving them all of the positive talk that we can give, answer some of the questions. And then Miss Angelucci just talked about it. If there are reservations that you're hearing from your kid, go ahead and reach out to the school now. We can get you in, walk the building, get familiar. We can introduce kids to the right people so they have a person the first day that's going to walk up and call them by their name and say, well, welcome to Winburn Middle School. You're right where you're supposed to be. I got you from here. But I think those conversations at home really can making it a positive tone in the conversation helps tremendously.
I couldn't agree more with you. Just acknowledge their nerves. It's okay to be nervous and excited. That's part of this. And then practice the what if situations, right? So like lost schedule, finding the lunchroom, talking to new people. Sometimes that comes down to role playing. And I know that depending on the relationship you have with your kid, but like, how are those soft skills right before, shaking the hand, meeting the teacher for the first time, those things. And confidence grows when kids know what to expect. Previewing their day will take off that edge. So print out their schedule, walk it through with them.
Yeah, something else, and I think this is a good time to talk about this as parents is, Fayette County, we're rolling out Parent Square, which is going to be our primary communication platform to make sure that you're registered with Fayette County. Email addresses are updated as families. Phone numbers are correct. So parents are getting all the accurate information. Without parents, we want to take away the step of you having to go search for things. So the way we do that is we're going to send it out, email it, text it, so it comes straight to your phone, device, computer, whatever it is, to help you as a family be able to communicate without having to go to the website and try to navigate all of these unknown places.
So is this an app, or what is this Parent Square going to be?
It's going to be however parents prefer to receive information, they'll be able to get it that way. So there will be an app, which you can download, and it's very easy to use. And then if parents prefer not to use the app, they can get the information from email. It'll come that way. So however the teacher sends it out, it will go to each parent however they prefer to receive it. So if you have multiple kids at multiple schools and you don't want a lot of emails, the app may be better. But all schools will be moving away from any other communication platform they had before. So if they had Class Dojo, that's going away, and everybody in the district is moving to Parent Square.
Yay!
That does sound easier.
Yeah.
It does. That was a big complaint of mine. It's like, there's too many apps, because if you have kids in sports as well, they're on different apps. And then if you have it different schools, there's going to be different apps. So I'm really excited that Fayette County is only going to have one app. This is huge.
Yes.
Yeah, and it'll also translate. So if you're a family that prefers information in a different language, it will translate automatically to you based on the language preference. So making sure that, like Mr. Thornsberry said, to get that information, making sure your email's correct. Fayette County's asking everybody to get on Infinite Campus, just logging in, and you have to just click through. It's really easy. I did it as a parent for both my girls. It took me less than 10 minutes to do. But just click through, making sure your information's correct. If you need a bus, that's how you make sure your bus is there as well. So just making sure you get onto that fcps.net/campus parent to check your information and make sure it's correct.
I feel like there's been a lot of information about buses this year. Did something change that parents should be aware of?
At this point, we're asking every student who's going to ride a bus that they have to go in and register through the FCPS website. So that there's a big push to get all of the kids registered to make sure that we know who's on a bus, where they're supposed to be picked up, and that every kid is accounted for.
There will be a new tracking system on those buses, so parents can track the buses where they are. If your bus is a little bit late, you can log into the app. That's optional, but the making sure you're registered to get onto the bus is important, that everybody does that. And then the second piece is getting onto that new bus tracking system, which the schools will be sending information out about that.
And
That's
tying
neat.
this back together, and I think we've touched on this, the importance of preparing for the school year. As the parents and the adults, and we have to make sure we're taking care of our part and not just putting that burden on the kid. The last thing we want is the 12-year-old to come home and go, Mom, Dad, Aunt, Uncle, you haven't registered me for the bus yet. We don't want that. We want to get ahead of that so that the student can just do their part, which is get up, get ready for school, get on a bus and come in and let's start learning.
On that topic of communication, because it seems like we're having some good changes to promote communication, what is the best way for parents to communicate with teachers? How do we make sure we can talk to them? We also don't want to be that annoying parent and have them not want to hear from us. What's your recommendation on that?
I'm a big fan of having parents involved in their child's education. It's important for that kid better than anyone else in the school system. So I think it's important that partnership is there. I often talk about us co-parenting. You'll hear that sometimes, that it is a true partnership with home and school. It's dependent on communication. As a principal, going into my third year, I want parent involvement. I want the feedback. And I think if I had to speak for the teachers, I think come from a place of understanding. Some teachers are getting 24 to 31 just in their classroom, maybe at the elementary levels. Middle school, that starts to expand. But at the high school, they could have 140 kids for that semester that they're trying to build strong relationships with, and not only with the students, but with you as well. Just being patient with it. Know that every single day we're doing our very best for your child, and it is a true partnership.
Yeah, I talk a lot. One of my core beliefs is carrying the banner and making sure that we're representing our school in a positive light. We often talk to our families about coming in, assume good intentions. We're not doing something to harm your students. So come in with that good intention, understand why we did, and let's approach it with curiosity rather than coming at us with criticism. As a parent, come in and go, okay, what's going on? Why did this happen? What are the details? Because, things get lost in translation between the adult and the kid, and then the adult, the teacher, the kid, then the family. So really be open to coming in and sitting down and having that discussion, or on the phone if that's the best way to communicate. But always come in with that open mindset of, okay, let's really figure out what happened, and then how do we address that and then make it better. I'll speak for every principal. Our number one thing is to make kids that are in our building feel like that they belong, that they know that's the place they're supposed to be. And when there's tension with families or a family, a lot of times that becomes harder for us. That creates a barrier. My advice would be simply come in just being open-minded, positive, again, curiosity versus criticism. And let's figure out exactly what's happening, why is it happening, and then how do we move forward and make it a better experience for your child.
Yeah, I'll echo 100% that this is a partnership and we need families to really make sure that we're addressing the needs of all of our students. At the elementary level, a lot of times our students have a hard time advocating for themselves, or as a parent, you might see something you feel like your kid needs, or you want to explain a situation to a teacher that maybe the student wasn't able to explain. You definitely need to reach out to those teachers and let them know, because I always say what we don't know, we can't fix, and what we don't know, we can't help with. So a lot of times kids will go home and tell families something that we didn't know about, or maybe a different version of what happened. And so just making sure you reach out. If something doesn't sound right to you, then just reach out. And like Mr. Thornsberry was saying, approach it with curiosity, because if it doesn't sound right, then there's probably something that needs to be discussed. And so we're always open to families coming in for in-person conference, phone conferences, phone calls, whatever it is, even just a quick email if you're like, I'm not sure what color they're supposed to wear tomorrow. Or at elementary, we have all those fun dress-up days. So it's always okay to reach out. I think a lot of times teachers will send home like a back-to-school, get to know your teacher flyer, and just making sure you read that, see what the best way for them is to communicate. But just reach out anyway, Parent Square, email, phone, however's best. And teachers and school administrators are always eager to talk with families.
Can I chime in real quick? You know what I love? I love it when a parent calls and is like, we had a bad morning.
Yeah, get the heads up.
We had a bad morning. It was a rough start. Or last night something happened and it was pretty tragic, and we're trying to work through that as a family. We're going to be there. We're going to be late. That gives us the opportunity to get supports before that kid walks in the door. Because the last thing you want them to do is come in, be reactive, and then now we got a much deeper situation we got to address. Or there's something that happens into the community, usually spills into school. And what happens in school usually spills out into the community. So anytime we can get those heads up, it's not tattletelling on yourself as a parent. We're all working together here.
So who do you ask for? So if I were to call because we had something going on, I just call the school's main number. Mm-hmm. Then who do I ask to talk to?
A lot of times our front office secretary will take that call and she'll relay it. So if you're comfortable with that person, I know a lot of our families are very comfortable with our front office secretary, and they'll tell her, and then she'll let who needs to know. You can also ask to speak with a guidance counselor. If you really want it to be a little bit more private, you can ask to speak with the principal, and they may not be able to talk to you right at arrival, but they'll give you a call back as soon as they can, or the teacher. I think any of those, we always tell the kids to find a trusted adult in the building, whoever they're most comfortable. It doesn't have to be their homeroom teacher. It can be another adult. Same as adults. If there's a person in the building who you feel most comfortable speaking with, they're most likely going to have a relationship with you. And I think it's okay to ask to talk with anybody at that point.
And when you were talking about communicating with teachers, is this something on those back to school nights as parents we should ask our kids' teachers, hey, if I want to communicate with you, what is your preferred way of communication, whether it's email, this new app?
I think that's absolutely the best thing to do as a family and as a parent, is to ask that specific teacher, because we're all different. So I think to have that conversation with our teachers, what's the best way? We do ask that they respond within, I say 48 hours. I think that's more reasonable than 24. But we ask that there's some kind of response to that. But I do believe it's really good as a parent to engage with the teacher. What's the best way to communicate with you, to create that relationship with them? And all it does is make the teacher feel, all right, this parent really wants to know. It's not just a random question. Like, you really want to be involved in it. And they feel that when you ask that kind of question.
Are you able to request conferences outside of those normal parent-teacher conference set times?
Absolutely.
Just schedule them.
Yeah.
The best conferences are the ones that are going to be scheduled. You come unannounced, and sometimes parents get frustrated and they need to come up and they want to meet with someone. That's usually at that point, it's an administrator, and then we'll get the conference scheduled. I just want to set the tempo that if you come up same day looking for a conference, And sometimes that happens. It most likely will not occur. So setting up conferences, yes, 100%. We do that all the year. Sometimes it's with a counselor and a specific teacher or a school administrator. Those go on every single day. There's a parent-teacher conference going on, but it's best to schedule.
So the last 2 years, I've not had to worry about this because my daughter's teachers have been so communicative, and we have gotten this email every week really explaining what they're learning. But I've also had some years where I really felt like I had no idea what she should know and what for sure they were learning. Also, my daughter was starting kindergarten back right after COVID, and so I'm sure that contributed to it too. But I've had wide varieties in teacher communication as far as what they're learning, what I feel like I need to be making sure she knows at school and working on at home. So if you do have one of those teachers that you feel like you're not getting that feedback from on a regular basis, what's the best way to go about trying to get that?
I will say, and Mr. Loscheider talked about this earlier, we have teachers, 130, 140 kids, 7 classes a day that they're teaching. So sometimes that communication does break down. It becomes another thing that they feel like they have to do. So again, establishing how are we going to communicate? Our job has to be, how are we communicating with families and where can they find that information? Like, we have to make sure we have a system in place that makes it really easy. When that question comes in, just allow us to go, hey, if you check right here, you'll find everything you need to know. Done. So our job as a school is to create a system or a structure that will have that in place so that we can point a parent or family in the right, so anybody can do that. It shouldn't just fall on that one specific teacher. I will say, if we do run into those issues, I have to communicate with the principal or the guidance counselor is easy. Hey, I'm not hearing from them. Can you help me out? And take that kind of approach with it instead of, again, going to the criticism part of it. And let us try to figure out why it's not happening. Is there something else going on where we can get that information to you? Work with the family. What's the best way to get it to you? Maybe I've got it posted over here in Canvas, but you never get on Canvas to look at it. So how do I need to get that to you as a parent so that it's better for you?
So on the Fayette County Public Schools website, there are family learning guides for every grade level from preschool through high school. So if you're concerned, like you had mentioned about that you're not sure what they're supposed to be learning, you can check there and it will tell you different subject areas, and they're translated into several different languages, what they're supposed to be learning if you need like a benchmark for that, if that's a concern. But like Mr. Thornsbury said, I think it's always appropriate to reach out to the teacher to say, can you give me an update on their academics? I'm just a little concerned that maybe they're not reading where they're supposed to, and they may want to set up a conference. We're always taking pulse of where kids are at, and so the teacher will know that. It's just a matter of if they're not communicating that, it's definitely okay to ask. At the higher elementary and then middle and high school, Infinite Campus is another great place to check for grades and assignments, what's been turned in, what their assessments are looking like. We start that at Squires in 4th grade. You'll start to see grades on Infinite Campus. Other schools might look a little different than that.
And what about if your kid has more needs, like if they need more time for testing or they're dealing with ADHD or other things that may impact their learning? Do you have particular advice for them on how they can best advocate for their kid?
I think starting with the teacher and having those conversations with the teacher, coming in with a plan with those teachers. They'll have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 levels of support that they'll be working with you on, being like, so this is what we're doing at school, this is what we need to do at home, collecting data, meeting with the guidance counselor as well, and then also meeting with the school administration to come up with a plan, because there may be a situation where there is a suspected delay or disability, and then going through those channels together as a team.
And just being aware that process takes time. There's some guidance we have to follow on there. So we always start with interventions. We don't jump straight into an official IEP. And so if it is an academic issue that we're looking at, we want to try to see if something else is going to help first before we jump into our most restrictive plan. So just being patient and asking questions. Every school has a school psychologist that does the testing and walks through that process. And so if you're not sure or it doesn't sound right or if you're confused, it's always okay to ask questions and clarify, because a lot of times we do these a lot. And so we talk, quickly, or we talk through them as if we've done them before. And I know a lot of families, it's the first time, and it's totally okay to say, wait, I'm not sure what you meant by that. Can you explain that in a different way? And make sure you feel comfortable with the process and what's happening with your student and making sure that they're making the progress that you're wanting them to make.
I think educators could be just as guilty as doctors. Sometimes we get stuck in the educational lingo, very similar to doctors and the lingo and the abbreviations that come out. Like Miss Angelucci said, it's always okay to just stop, ask a question, be like, what does an IEP mean? What is that acronym? And working through that with each other.
Yeah, I made a note on this, and just communicate early and with clarity of what exactly are you seeing at home? What is the concern about? You referenced ADHD. So let's talk about that up front. Don't wait for a problem to arise before you come in. Like communicate, hey, this is what we've seen at, for us at the middle school level, what worked at 5th grade. Don't wait until the problem happens to come and tell us what worked. Let's have a plan. We may not have to execute that plan. We might be able to provide the supports, to allow your student to be successful. But at the same time, let's know that if this happens, we're going to be ready to respond in a way that was effective in their previous setting rather than that problem to occur. We talked about that communication. Now we've got a problem that we have to address rather than us being proactive. And there's always opportunities to come in and say, hey, at elementary, this is what worked. This is what was going on when this happens at home. And there's so many variables outside of school that impact the kid coming in. Just to be clear and communicate that with us. That way we can have a plan. Then that phone call to you as a parent is, hey, this happened today. Thanks for giving us the heads up. We did what you said and it worked. Thanks for working with us, being a partner in what we're doing. And we will make those phone calls and say that just to let families know, hey, we need you to be a part of this and it worked.
Well, that's great advice. Now, when we are trying to support our children in meeting their academic goals, what are some advice that you all have for parents in general of not becoming too pushy of a parent?
We don't want to cause too much pressure and make them have anxiety about their learning. How can we push them to succeed and to try hard without making them feel overwhelmed or they're in competition with their peers and that kind of stuff?
So I think you need to focus on progress and not perfection. Have conversations with your students when they get in the car. Knowing my mom, she's going to be listening to this podcast because she knew I was on it. And every day she would I'd get in the car and she'd go, how's your day? And I go, it's fine. What'd you learn? Nothing. But eventually we start having those conversations and you take those times in the car. Those end up being like the most precious moments you have with your kids. As they get older, you lose that time with them, is either dropping them off, picking them up, taking them to a ball game. Take that time to ask those questions, talk about their progress, not the perfection, praise the effort, not just the grades. I just feel like when parents encourage growth over results, kids will still stay motivated and they'll still be resilient.
Can you give us some examples? I'm gonna really pull on this because I feel like this is a hard thing as a parent. Like you might be able to tell that your child is so smart and has so much potential, and then you may see that they're not pushing themselves or really taking the time to fully understand a concept. They're just trying to get it done. And so what would you recommend parents do to try to not just get it done, but actually understand, learn, and take that knowledge with you through life?
So grading could be an entirely different podcast for me. I have a lot of firm beliefs in the way that we grade. But talking to the students, that failure is okay while you're doing the task. We all fail. You're going to edit things out of this podcast that didn't sound right or work to make it the best it can possibly be. So failure is okay as long as you're making growth towards where you're going. And a lot of times we get tied up into the A. It's the A. So with kids, a lot of times they don't have to apply themselves a lot to get that A. So they don't need to conceptually understand it, because if I just do this part, I'll get an A with no problem. And that becomes what they really strive for, is the A, not to understand the concept and process what they're learning. So we talk a lot in my perfect world at Tates Creek Middle School. We separated behavior, meaning academic honesty. Are you turning things in on time? Are you completing the work? We separated that into a different grading category. And then we just had, what are you learning? So the assessment was, are you learning what you're supposed to learn? But then we also monitored all of those, 21st century skills. So we could sit and have a real conversation. Look, your kid is smart, but man, they do not do anything. They cannot complete the work in class. They're always late with everything. So we have to shift our focus to how do we get those life skills in line, because eventually it's going to catch up to you, whether it's high school or college or in the work environment, that if you can't manage time very well, meeting a deadline is going to be really hard for you. So we have to make sure we build in that time to do it. So I think as a parent, to understand that it's okay. It doesn't mean they're going to get a failing grade, but it's okay for the kid to struggle and have that, but it's got to be a productive struggle. We have to be willing to challenge that student differently, because they're all unique. We have to be able to do things different to challenge that kid to want to do it. Because if they're bored, a lot of times they'll just hurry up and get it finished. And like you said, they won't apply themselves or push themselves to get to that next level of the concept.
Yeah, I'll add on. I think it's like Mr. Thornsberry said, each kid's unique. And it's so different. And I have 3 different girls at home. And so knowing how to push your child in a way that's not going to be counterproductive for them. I have one who, if I question anything, is going to shut down. And so I know that that's not what I need to be doing with that one. One who is going to need a little bit of push and is going to take that on and take on the challenges just in a different way than her sister. So I think it's important to reach out to the teacher too, because children at home may look like they're rushing through something, but then you may get a very different report at school that they are really working hard and that they are excelling and that they ask questions. And I have this is my situation where it feels like there's not a lot of work being done at home. And, if I question, it's going to not go well. But when I talk to the teacher, she is questioning. She is working through her work. They say she's a very hard worker at school. And so I back off at home with that because I know that she is meeting her goal. And like Mr. Loscheider said, she's growing. I think it's also important for us to take a step back, and especially at the elementary level, a lot of times we want to say we want them to read to us at night, or we want them to show us what they know. But they're tired too, and it's okay for us to still read to them. There's still a lot of positive outcomes to us still reading to them, even in 5th, 6th, 7th grade at night, if they'll let you do it. And they don't have to necessarily always be the ones showing us what they know. We can work together on that. And I think just really knowing your kid and knowing how to push them, when to push them, and then really kind of taking in what the teachers are saying at school is happening.
I'm gonna jump on that a little bit too. I love great analogies, so I'm gonna put 2 of them out here for this topic. Someone once told me that we're all kind of like popcorn kernels. We go in the microwave at the same temperature. We're coming from the same crop of kernels, but we all pop at different times. And sometimes they pop as soon as you take it out of the microwave, or they pop in there, right? And that's the same thing with kids. Like, it's gonna click when it's gonna click for them. I also heard someone had explained life to me in this way, is that you're not going to get straight A's in life. You got to understand that. And that could be for the day. Like, physically, I'm probably a B- right now. Or emotionally, I'm a C+ today. Or as a school administrator, I'm an A+. When I went home today, I was probably a B- as a dad, right? But every day we're striving for our best. We're striving for our best, not the person next to us. And I think when we talk about grades, right, and we talk about like getting straight A's, we're not getting straight A's in life either. We're all doing our very best. Sometimes those are honest failures, and we got to work together.
I love all of this talk, mostly because the Starting Gate podcast, we talk about this in people's health and lifestyle-related endeavors, is we really need to quit thinking of things in perfection, because most of the time is only counterproductive. So I love hearing all of your voices promoting students learning to enjoy the process and the progress and not focusing on the perfection, because I always joke about that I'm a retired perfectionist, because not until you give away that desire to always be perfect can you really reach your full potential. And I love hearing educators talk about this. So this is making me very happy.
Sarah and I both said we have elementary school age kids, but I can imagine when they're in high school and looking at getting into colleges, I feel like that sense of perfection or getting the grade might feel even more important. Is there anything in particular for high school kids thinking about that you would say?
It's going to be okay. Right? I think that's the most important thing, is it's going to be okay. And there is that pressure because GPA can lead to scholarship money, right? Getting into certain universities, ACT scores, SAT scores, all of that matters. But if you don't have your mental health or your physical health, none of that matters. And I think that's something that we really need to continue to maintain a focus on too, is back to my analogy, it's not all about the straight A's. It's about living a balanced life. And I know it's hard, and there's that pressure of being the first one in your family to go to college. There's that pressure, not coming out of school with $150,000 in debt. But it's also okay if you don't go to college. Careers matter too, straight out of high school. One of the things that the state of Kentucky, specifically Fayette County Public Schools, has done has put an extraordinary effort and focus on technical education, making sure that these kids walk away from their experience at Fayette County Public Schools with a trade, with something that they can immediately go into the world and make an impact on. I'm the son of a college administrator. Going to college was non-negotiable, which is fine. I needed to go to college. But it's important to realize that all kids don't need to necessarily go to college. Do they need to continue their education? 100%. Trade schools, learning a skill, 100%. But we need to get away, back to Doc Sheets' comment about that striving for perfection. It's important. We need to wake up every day. We need to have accountability. We need to have a grind. We need to have a goal, but it's okay.
And I'll add, having worked in high school for most of my career, that something that we work on in middle and elementary is really getting the kids ready to advocate for themselves and taking on that responsibility themselves, and trying to get parents, like you were mentioning before, how not to necessarily be the one who's doing it for them, because at that point you really start to do a disservice when you're doing that at high school and you're questioning and you're calling teachers to ask about certain things. And it's 100% okay to do that in the right circumstances. But when you're talking about kids planning for their future, really teaching them to advocate for themselves and for them to tell their teachers what their goals are. If they're worried about an A in their class, then they need to be the ones to communicate with the teacher. I'm working on making sure my GPA is this because these are my goals, and working with the teacher. And teachers are there for the kids and they want the kids to be successful. And if a student is being open and communicating with them, they're going to do everything that they can to help. But sometimes kids, it's a hard lesson to learn if they go in on that last day and they say, well, I need an A, and there's all these missing assignments. They need to learn those things themselves. As a parent, monitoring and helping them learn those skills to advocate and to monitor their own progress, so that when they do go off into college and into the real world, that they're able to do that themselves.
At the middle school level, I think it really falls on our shoulders to teach kids how to productively struggle and that it's okay. And again, we talk about just the emotional growth from an 11-year-old to a 14-year-old that can happen in middle school. It's really getting that skill set so that they know that, okay, you struggled, it's okay. Now let's reteach it. Can we give it to you a different way? Can you demonstrate it to us in a different way? Maybe pencil and paper isn't the easiest way for you to do it. Can you construct it? Can you create a diagram? Can you build a model to show us that you understand that concept? But we have to really instill that it's okay to productively struggle. Don't quit. And that's where a lot of times you were talking about the overachiever. Like a lot of times that's what happens. I didn't get it and then I shut down and I melt down. We have to teach them, okay, what happened? Where was the breakdown? And then how can we just start at that point? And then it's okay. Like Mr. Lowshider said, it's okay. And believe it or not, a lot of times we don't hear that from parents, that it's not okay. Yet every day in our walks of life, we fail every day and have to take a step back and go, what just happened there? And it's not life ending or career ending. It's like, okay, what went wrong with that? And we go through that process of, okay, let's study what happened. Let's analyze it. What do we need to do different to make it better the next time? We have to be intentional about making sure that our kids understand it's okay, but we're not going to quit. We're going to instill that drive in you to want to continue to get better.
And I think that's for us too. For teachers, for administrators, we're trying to bring it every day. And there's days we fail. There's days that we fail as teachers or as administrators, or not necessarily failing the whole day, or we fall short, but we got to take a deep breath, own it, learn from it, and grow.
These are very wise words.
I know, yes.
I do want to switch topics here because I know this one is a hot topic right now because of some things that have changed, and that's just related to technology in schools. Just let the parents know what should they expect in this school year that is different.
Yeah, at Winburn, what we did last year was in December. So we did some evaluating. It was my first year there, so we did some evaluating the first quarter or first 2 semesters, and we realized that cell phones, technology was an issue. Kids communicating with each other, conflict was starting, all of these things that were transpiring when they should be learning. So we put into place a pretty clear system that phones had to be put up out of sight. We don't want to see them at all. So we made a very clear procedure. If you got caught with your phone out, we actually had purchased pouches so that it went in the pouch and it was locked up the rest of the day. And then obviously if you repeated that progressively, it got worse. But what we were amazed with was, we probably had 95% compliance. Our kids were kind of thankful that it was being put up. Parent support was through the roof with it. They were great. We didn't hear that stuff. I pay for the phone. You can't take it. It was very clear that your kid gets to carry the phone with them all the time. Just going to be locked up in a pouch. They can't use it. We did that, and we saw a decrease in a lot of things. Social emotional, we saw fewer peer conflicts that escalated simply because of a text. There's no tone in text a lot of times. If I'm having a conflict with a friend and they send me that message during math class, I'm having a meltdown. A lot of that stuff started to go away simply because they couldn't have them. We took it away in the cafeteria. You couldn't use it there. And it was amazing to watch kids start to have conversations with each other, which just wasn't occurring. I mean, put on headphones, eat lunch by yourself, basically. So we saw significant progress socially, where our kids were interacting in positive ways and far less of the negative stuff was coming into play.
Oh, this makes me so happy to hear. I know that's been one of my biggest worries about middle school and phones being more available for use and more kids having them and interrupting their day. So I love hearing that in a short period of time, you already saw great progress. That's amazing.
So is this going to be all Fayette County wide now? Is that the
So
plan?
there was a new bill passed in the last session banning cell phones during the instructional time at school. So Fayette County is, for grades 6 through 12, students will not have access to their phones at all during instructional time. And each school will have different policies surrounding what that looks like if they do have that, like Mr. Thornsberry was talking about. So that's something to look at the school level. But district-wide, the cell phones will be not available to students during their instructional time. In grades K through 5, that's also the case. They're not going to be available. It's not as big of an issue at school, but we do know that some kids as young as 3rd, 2nd grade are bringing their cell phones or their watches to school. And I just would urge families to really think about the necessity of that in elementary school. I know that some students are walking to school and they might want them then, but just really having the conversation with your student, that is a privilege to have that device and that it's not being used. It's not to be used at all during the school day. It's just so much distraction to the students and they really don't need it. If you need to reach your child during the school day in any K through 12 situation, you can call the school and we can get a hold of that student immediately. Just really making sure that you're having the conversation at all grade levels about the responsibility of that device. When the school has a rule that is to be followed for their own social needs, for their own academic needs, it's for them is why those rules are in place.
Yeah, what I really like about this law coming from the high school's perspective is that we're really going to be protecting that instructional time. I think as a society, we get those cell phones and they're thieves of time. The next thing you look up and you're like, oh man, I've been scrolling through emails for 25 minutes. I need to be more present. So I'm hopeful that that will encourage and protected instructional time, but also to hear what Mr. Thornsberry said, who's done this for a year already, and the amount of peer conflicts that's decreased. I think in general, when we get back to communication, it's always good to have a face-to-face conversation, especially when we're having to deal with, what did you mean by that? No conflict ever got resolved in a text message, ever. You got to have that face-to-face conversation.
Yeah, I'll add to that just because they're banned during the school day, just making sure that you're really following up on what your kids are doing on those cell phones after school and at night, that we see at all grade levels things that come into the building that happen the night before at 2 a.m. in a text thread, and that students that you may not even know have access to Snapchat or to social media platforms, they've found a way to do it, and they are on those platforms. And I'm not saying that to scare anybody, but just to also think about when the appropriate time is to hand those devices to your child. I know mine feels like she's the only one without a phone, and she's not, but she's not getting one. I've seen too much.
Feels the same way.
One thing with that, and this is going to be me being the old man in the room, pre-COVID, there was all this conversation about screen time, way too much screen time. No phones. It was really easy. That's all we had. But then post-COVID, we give every kid a computer or a Chromebook, and phones are now more readily available. And then everything we did was on a Chromebook or on their phone. And we're seeing quickly in 3 or 4 years from that, just the impact that it has on the school environment. And we could see that coming. Giving a Chromebook to a kid that they can have access 24 hours, like, what's going to happen with this? How are we going to manage what's happening at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Chromebook? We weren't even thinking about the phones at that point. Then you had the phones on to, you've got kids that, there are days that I'll come to the building and there are kids sitting out front getting school Wi-Fi on their Chromebook so they can watch YouTube. That's a Saturday afternoon. So in some ways, I think an unintended consequence of going to more online platforms, we actually put kids in front of that screen more. And like I said, luckily, we're responding to that a whole lot quicker than I think anybody thought we would. And we're taking that away and trying to go back a little bit and get that thing out of your face. Both of them.
I do see a swing both at the school level and just in my own personal life of families wanting to wait longer to give those, or if they need it for the walk home, that it's just a flip phone or it's a watch with a phone number. But the access to the internet is just something that maybe they don't need at that age because their brains are not fully developed and they're not quite ready for that.
And I don't think we're anti-phone. We got to be pro-focus, if that makes sense. We need to get away from not being present.
Speaking of things that are changing in the world of technology, how are you seeing things like ChatGPT and AI influence how kids are doing their homework? How do you know they're not just putting all their homework into ChatGPT and getting the answers?
That is a big challenge at the middle school level. In all honesty, kids are moving a lot faster than some of us are with
Yeah,
it. So,
I think
so
they
they're getting
do,
access
yeah.
and figuring it out. And Apple AI now, and again, on their phones, it's all right there. So there's all of these things that they get to do. And we stress the importance of we have to know our kids. So when something comes across the desk that doesn't look right, now we explore. And it goes back to that. We have to teach our kids how to appropriately use it. I'll be honest, I'm learning how to use it. I will never sit down and go, don't ever use ChatGPT. I'm on there. Gemini is something that our district provides for us that we're able to use. And we have to continue to educate our students how to use it appropriately, but we also have to know them enough to figure out when an answer comes across like, was this AI generated or not? And I go back to that curiosity. Don't judge immediately. Let's figure out if that's what they use. But we saw it increase significantly last year just because it was more available and the availability of it was there.
It's a tool, right? It's very similar to how we're using cell phones, and how we're going to be teaching that is it's knowing when to use it and when not to use it. Use it as a tool. You're not going to use a chainsaw to hammer a nail. You gotta know when to use that tool, and I think that's what we need to teach them.
Yeah, and I will say Fayette County is being very proactive in training us as principals, training our staff, offering opportunities for them to learn how to use it, for us to use it in our own jobs, but then how to trickle that down to the students. At Squires, I've seen several really amazing lessons where the kids are on different AI platforms and creating images and creating different text, but how to use that appropriately and when the time is. So there is a lot of interest in it, and there's a lot of training that we're getting to help us navigate that.
I think tying it back to grades, a lot of times you see that kid that's struggling, they use it to get the grade. That's the driving force isn't to understand how to do the work. It's if I don't do this, I'm not going to get the grade. And that's where we have to take the focus off of that grade. You get caught, you used it, okay. But sometimes I'll be like, I'm proud of you for taking the initiative to go in. Like you had to type something in the prompt to get the answer that you wanted. So now let's teach how to do that. But again, a lot of times we see that it's grade driven. They're not using it as a shortcut. They're actually using it. If I don't do this, I'm not going to get the grade. So it's really grade driven more than it is, I want to beat the system. I don't want to have an F. And that's where we have to change that mindset about grading as well, but teach them to use the tool rather than worried about getting that A or B on the assignment.
You mentioned earlier about kids needing to not just focus on grades, but think about being involved in different ways. And so for kids that maybe, let's say, are not great at sports or not going to make a JV or varsity sports team, or they're not great musicians, and you've talked a lot about sense of belonging, how do you encourage those students to find their niche and really feel like they belong somewhere?
So just to hashtag all in on 1600, there is something to be all in on at Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School. There are tons and tons of clubs, organizations, committees, not only for the parents, but for the students to be involved in. And from like student sections to technology clubs, to book clubs, Dungeons and Dragons clubs, you name it, there's a club for it. And it's getting that opportunity to get involved, and then as parents, providing that space to let them get involved as well.
Yeah, from my standpoint as a leader, and this isn't elementary, middle, or high, this is just me personally, I feel like it's my job to create that opportunity. At Tates Creek Middle, we had a very simple process that we taught the kids. If there's something you want to do that we don't have it, come to me. Here's the process. I made them basically do an application, but then they came and met with me and have to give the purpose, and I never declined them. If the kids want it, I feel like it's my job to make it happen. So we're doing the same thing at Windburn, is we're trying to create that culture where if we're not offering something that our kids need, and notice I say we need, most of the times they want it, but really that they need that's going to be their way to be involved, we have to create it. So no, typically when there's a student that wants to do something, no doesn't come out of my mouth at all. It's how do we make it happen? And I'll give a great example. We had an 8th grade student last year, and she wore me out all year because I was slow at responding to her, but she wanted to do a mentor group. So we met one day. I walked her through the process. I made her create a plan, like a business type plan. She created that. She came to me. Then I went with her to meet with teachers so that she could implement it. She was an 8th grade student, wanted to mentor 6th and 7th grade kids. So we built it within the school day. It cost her absolutely nothing but her time. And it empowered her and 5 other students to go mentor 6th and 7th grade kids. And it was all student led. And our teachers got on board with that. And it was just simply something, she told me she wanted to leave a footprint. And at that point, okay, how do I make this happen for you? So we just sat down and worked through it together. And that's something that I'll remember for her. Anybody that calls me for a reference, I'll be able to go, initiative, boom, right there. Did she complete it? Absolutely. Was she successful at it? Yes. We saw gains from the students they were working with socially, and she wants to come back and be a part of it as a freshman in high school. She wants to come back and help train other 8th graders this year to model that. So us as leaders have to be willing to give that opportunity to our kids when they need something.
The power of student agency.
Yeah.
Power of student agency.
I think even at elementary level, if you're a parent and your student is not involved or you feel like they're not connected to the school, really talking with them about what maybe a club they would want to start. And if teaching the student to reach out and ask about it. But if they're not comfortable doing that, offering that support to them, like maybe you go together to ask that, or maybe you just ask would you be okay if I emailed your teacher or the principal and suggested this club? And I think everyone's going to be open to those conversations, and both have said before that we're there to support kids and we're there to create opportunities for them. If there's an idea that they have, for sure, share it and let us know, because we want to make sure that those opportunities are there for them.
It's not a Starting Gate show without us talking about nutrition, and we just wanted to just touch lightly on this subject. But is there anything specific that you would want parents to know about preparing for the school year, whether it comes to breakfast or lunch, or even simple hiccups that happen a lot that maybe parents aren't even aware of, that they should be talking to their kids about at each of these levels to make sure that they're getting enough food and nourishment to be able to do their best in their school day?
Food insecurity is a real thing. It's very difficult to learn when you're hungry. At Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School, we have a family resource center. And when we talk about communication, and sometimes it can be humbling communications from parents when they have to come to us and say, hey, look, things are hard. Well, we're here to support you. So not necessarily on the nutritional aspect, but on the aspect of making sure basic needs are met. We are here for you. And confidentiality is number one in those situations. So communicate to us so we can help fulfill those needs.
Yeah, I would just say to parents, especially those that are in need, don't be so prideful you won't ask for help. Our job is to do those things. We partner with businesses that we give backpacks of food on the weekends. There are things in place where we can give you what you need outside of school, but also, and I'm not the picture of health by any stretch of the imagination, but nothing drives me crazier than at 8:35 when the doors open, the kid's walking in with Takis and a Mountain Dew. Talk to your student, talk to your kid about what you can have that, but probably not the best thing to start your day with at 8:35 is to load up on that, especially when lunch is just around the corner with that. So, and that may fall on us a little bit to educate families a little bit more about what is or what isn't. But a lot of times at the middle school level, I cannot speak to the high school, but man, our kids will come in with bags of just junk food to start their day. And typically what happens after they share it with 5,000 kids, number one, which isn't the healthiest thing in the world. But then if they scarf it down, it's not long before they're either tired or lethargic or that stomach's hurting. And typically we can tie it right back to, you ate 4 bags of Takis this morning and drank a Mountain Dew. Like it was 8:45 and that was your breakfast.
Sarah and I's heads are spinning.
I would just say, at all levels, just know your child's schedule for the day, too. So I know our kids come in, and it's early when they get into school. Doors open at 7:15. So if they can't have breakfast before they leave the house because it's too rushed, talk to them about getting breakfast in the cafeteria. Some schools have free breakfast, some it's pay, but all schools have breakfast options for the kids. So making sure they know that. Our last lunch ends at 12:30. So if they get there at 7:15 and then don't eat lunch till 12, that's a long time. Talking with your kid about, do you need to bring a snack? Talking with the teacher about that. If your child's coming home starving every day, just thinking about what that looks like for your family. We also can work with families on providing snacks. I know our kindergartners all get a snack break because they still need that. Just looking at what their schedule is going to look like, talking with the teacher, making sure you feel comfortable with what that looks like for your family.
I know it's helpful talking to your kids about nutrition and trying to teach them, because you're not there to help them pick out their breakfast or lunch unless they're packing it and taking it with them. But it's always a great opportunity as a parent to be able to go on and teach some basic principles of things that your kids should think about eating, just so they're not eating
Takis
and drinking Mountain Dew, that, hey, maybe they should consider eating a piece of fruit or having some protein, and just trying to learn to teach your child these basic skills as well, because it will help them in the long run.
Yeah, I've found with my daughter, I can point things out, like if she does eat just cereal for breakfast, and then she'll say, I was so hungry at lunch. And then if she's had a breakfast where it's been some Greek yogurt and berries or something, I'm like, were you starving at lunch? Oh, no, I wasn't. You don't have to villainize any particular food, but just say, like, how did this food last you today? Did you feel like you were crashing, or did you feel like you could focus better? Try to encourage them to notice it, to try to make the choice themselves of something that might be more helpful.
So as we're wrapping this up, I would love to hear some closing thoughts from each of you all that you would provide of how to best succeed this school year. You all provided lots and lots of tips and ideas.
So at the elementary level, I think it's just really important to have a really good start to the school year, to get them excited. The kids are naturally so excited to be back at school, and we love when they come back into the building, and being prepared by, making sure you know what school supplies they need, how to get those if you aren't able to do that, coming to those open houses, being involved as a parent is going to really help make it a successful year. And that looks different for every family. So whether that's you communicating with your student's teacher, whether that's you being able to come to family nights, whatever that looks like for you, just being involved in the school and making sure that not only does your child feel like they belong, but that you as a family feels like you belong at that school too.
Yeah, I think I'll piggyback that as well. Is from the parent perspective, I think that sense of belonging, whatever that looks like, it's going to be different by each family. But what does that feel like? Did you feel like the door was always open for us? So the feedback that I'm looking for at the end of the year is, what did our families really think about the experience that their kid had in our building? So really looking for that sense of belonging. Students, you're going to hear me not talk about grades, because it's not about that. I want our kids to walk out each and every day knowing that they were seen, heard, and that there's somebody that can go to bat for them. So if they're walking into our building every day and when they leave at the end of the year, they don't want to go home, I usually can sit back and go, okay, we've done what we're supposed to do. They want to be here, because if I can get them to want to be there, everything else can happen. So it's really, at the end of the year, it's like, did we create that culture that we wanted to create, from principals to teachers to other staff to students and then to parents? Did everyone feel that they were a part of that, and that sense of, I can't wait to come back? So we really, really focus on building that. So it's not just about grades. It's going to be socially, it's going to be emotionally, it's going to be parent nights, our culture nights that we do, anything that we can do to make sure that our families are out there saying, man, this has been a great year. And maybe they can't pinpoint exactly what it was. That's a success. Because what happens, and I was going to bring this up earlier, at our desk, I probably get 20 negative conversations to every one good thing. So my entire life every day is really grounded in, here's a problem, here's a problem, here's a problem, here's a problem. So sometimes I walk out going, man, that was bad. And to hear the good things, and typically it's the end of the year where that starts to really show itself, is at the end of the year, and you can step back and go, man, all of the struggles that happened this year, man, we're walking away feeling really good, because our kids, they know they're supposed to be here. They're right where they're supposed to be, and our families are saying, man, this has been a really good year.
Yeah, so back to school is going to be a total family reset, right? Be mindful of that. Remember that you set the tone when you drop your kids off at school, and that this is a true partnership between home and school, and we all want what's best for your child.
Yeah, I think that's great. You guys have given us so many great tips today. I feel excited about going back to school.
I know. Hey, I also think for our listeners, we should send some positive emails to our principals just this school year after hearing this. So I'm going to put a little plug in for us to do that as big thank yous.
And Sarah and I love having a positive mindset for things involving your health, but I really feel like that's what I've heard from you guys. And I think what I've taken away from everything you've said today is, think about things up front, have good talks with your kids, and make sure they know what to expect, and go through what might be hard or might be problematic for them. But as you go through that with them, put it in a positive mindset. Don't just bring it up as, oh man, this is going to be so hard, or you're going to fight with that friend again if you're in the same class. And instead, just bring it up as, what opportunities are we going to have this year at this school with everyone involved? And I think that's a really great way for us to think about it, and to try to get our kids to think about it, and then to really be thinking about progress instead of perfection. So I think our kids are going to have a great year.
Be sure you tune in next week, and we're going to start talking about gut health and everything related to our gut. I know this has been a topic that a lot of people wanted to hear about. We have a special guest, Emily McGlone, who's going to talk about our nutrition and how it impacts our gut flora. So I know you all are excited to hear about this, so be sure you tune in next week for that.
See you next time.